Welcome to Fraud Friday. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking loan fraud, bankers, public officials, and borrowers who got caught. Today, we have our special guest, Lance Sexton, Executive Vice President, Phoenix Lending Service. The father, Lance, I call him, he has forgiven. I know these numbers are unbelievable, Lance. 250,000 PPP loans for $4 billion. You're it. No one's done more. I can confidently say.
Yeah, the forgiveness process on PPP loans, as well as the servicing and guarantee purchase process, Bob, I've been fully immersed and had an opportunity to learn about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The PPP loans were given to small business owners to use for employment if they presented documentation that the funds were used as purposes intended, i.e. to pay their employees. The loans would be forgiven. They wouldn't have to pay it back. Lance, today we're talking about a sole proprietor, Schedule C tax file that were eligible, and a sergeant at the Illinois State Prison System, a corrections officer, and he got caught up in this mess. He lost his job. He lost his career over a lousy $40,000 on 2 PPP loans. But first, I want to start with, give us the background on how sole proprietors were eligible. And what's that magic number, $20,832? We see that all the time. And I guess for our audience, if you got a $20,832 PPP loan, are you under extra scrutiny?
Well, it's actually, Bob, it's $20,833.
Oh, okay.
So in the PPP IFRs, and this was not, so the sole proprietor Schedule C filers, the vast majority of them got their loans in 2021 when PPP was opened up for those individuals. And in the initial PPP regulations, it talked about payroll. And, payroll was part of the forgivable expenses. You had to have at least 60% of the money spent on payroll. The other 40% could be on other expenses. But within that rule, it maxed a person's payroll eligibility at $100,000 per year, which if you go back and do the divided by 12 times 2.5, you can come up with $20,833.
So that was for per employee. Okay.
So that was relevant in 2020 as well as 2021, but it became especially relevant in 2021 when we had so many contractors and sole proprietors that applied for PPP, because most of those were one employee operations, and the one employee had a max salary of a max amount of PPP funds of $20,833. So one of the things you would see a lot of in that is Schedule Cs with exactly $100,000 in revenue.
Lance, you're off script. We have a Schedule C presented by this sergeant, $100,000 income, 0 expenses.
Yeah, Bob, that should have jumped out. And granted, many PPP loans were handled by fintech organizations that recruited PPP borrowers, collected the applications, provided them to SBA participant lenders. But in doing a review of our PPP portfolio, making SARS reports and Inspector General referrals, one of the things I told my team is if you've got a Schedule C that has $100,000 in revenue and no expenses, dig deeper. Yeah, dig deeper, because that has the potential to be fraudulent.
Well, I'll go one step further. It is fraud.
Bob, and the thing, I guess the fraudsters didn't really think about it, Bob. Why not do $106,000 or $101,299? But instead, because $100,000 would get them the maximum PPP loan for a independent contractor or sole proprietor, that's what they did.
Let's be perfectly clear. This was on the Illinois governor's Inspector General website. It's public information. The gentleman named is James White. He has not been indicted. So, but he was terminated for, and I'll read exactly what the issue was. So I want to be very clear, not indicted, but this is what the Inspector General said, quote, he said he knew the PPP loans he received were not used for the intended purposes. Mr. White confirmed he filled out a forgiveness application for the first loan, and that was forgiven. He said he did not realize until recently that he did not complete a forgiveness application for the second loan, so he would not have to pay that one back. The Inspector General interviewed him also and said that in addition for working for the Illinois Department of Corrections, he had a side hustle working for a security company. He also admitted he never made the $100,000 that was on the tax return. What the problem was, this is really a FOMO situation. There were 41 employees, a lot of them in Illinois, a lot of state employees, the Department of Health. And they had someone going around and say, hey, Lance, I can get you $20,000 free money. Give me 10%. Just sign some forms. And unfortunately, a lot of people got caught up into that. So I think it's fair for the Department of Justice to look at it and say, okay, what is the level of criminality on this one? Here they say, okay, there's a gray area. Rules were broken. Yeah. And it's the intent. But unfortunately, he took the money and he spent it on, quote, on repairs for a relative and for home repairs and also for health care. So he did get the money, he spent it. But the bottom line, Lance, you have a gentleman who lost his job and lost a nice career. And that's, go ahead.
My expectation in the position he was in, he made far more than $40,000 per year. So it's difficult to see why someone would take the risk of going out and letting someone, and a lot of the PPP fraudsters, Bob, you hear this as a common theme, exactly the scenario you talked about. Somebody was out there saying, oh, look, I can get you 20,000.
No, Lance, I got 20 grand. I got it free.
Yeah.
And you want it free. How can I get that? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want it? I can do the forms. You give me a percentage and we'll move on down the road. But I think they lost sight of the fact that the money was intended for actual business owners. Now, a Schedule C filer, an independent contractor, your Uber drivers. Bob, I can't tell you how many times I've been in an Uber and they were like, what do you do? And I work in SBA. And they're like, do you know anything about that PPP loan program? I got one. And it really helped me out. Well, I'm in the Uber car. I know the guy's doing it. So it was a legitimate eligible loan. Where we got into fraud are the people who generated PPP loan applications and had no type of business that they were filing a Schedule C. They generated a fake Schedule C.
Yeah. And that's what happened here. Let me close with this statement by the Inspector General. These loans, the PPP loans, as with any other, require truthful information as a basis for approval. State employees are expected, at a minimum, to maintain the public's trust and confidence. Misappropriating public funds is far from being ethical, professional, acting with integrity, or conducting oneself in a manner that reflects favorably upon the state. Accordingly, the Inspector General recommends the Illinois Department of Corrections terminate Mr. White.
Yeah, that's that is a very sad ending, and I'm sure he didn't think about he was putting his career at risk by taking these steps.
Thank you for joining us today for Fraud Friday, so you can stop criminals from stealing from you.
Have a good day.